Hello and welcome back to my devlog series. I know it's been a while, a little over a month since I've last uploaded, but my life's settled down a little bit now, so I actually have a bit of a schedule that I can start working on the game. Things aren't completely settled, but I've been excited to work on the game and I had some ideas, so I started back at the beginning of the month. Now, the sprint started the first of the month, and I really wasn't sure how I was going to spend it, but I ended up overhauling my dialogue system that I had already added to the game a few months prior. I did this because at the beginning of the sprint, I sat down with a few other game developers who were also trying to add that same dialogue system that I had put into my game, following the same tutorial on YouTube that I had followed. And as we were going through it, I was struggling to be able to help them because I didn't understand the code. It was foreign to me after so long. It didn't seem to make sense. It seemed to go in a bunch of loops that I didn't need it to go in. And it ultimately didn't end up being what I wanted for this game. It was just too much convoluted code. So I decided, let's just scrap it. I had already found another video that night when I was helping these other developers, or trying to help them. So I decided to follow this series and see where it would take me. Now, before I dive too much into that, let's just jump over to the computer screen so we can see the process I implemented throughout this sprint. Alright, so here we are over at the old Trello board, and apologies if this video starts out a little boring visually. I really just want to walk through these steps that I took throughout this video before I dive into what it actually looks like in the game, so we'll get there later. But first of all, as you can see right here, the first step I did was to overhaul the dialogue graph. And this literally meant overhaul. I went into File Explorer, I selected all of the scripts that had to do with the dialogue graph itself, and then I cut them from the application. I did this because, as I was kind of trying to hint at the beginning, I didn't feel like the dialogue graph system that I had in the game was really robust enough to be able to hand growth as I add new features, add new nodes, add new functionality to the dialogue mechanic in the game. I felt like it was just a little too buggy how I had implemented it, and it was a little too complex for me to actually be able to build on it. So everything had to go. It's never something a developer wants to do, but it's something a developer should often do and should be willing to do when they see that their code isn't going where it's supposed to go. So that was the first step, to overhaul the dialogue graph, and honestly it didn't take too long. It was basically just following the new video series step by step, doing basically exactly what the person in the video was doing. By the way, there's a link for that video in the description, and trying to think while I was following along how I was going to change it to make it work for my game, because it was generally how to create a node system in Unity, and I wanted to make it into a dialogue system. So I was just following the series, and then I was going to change that later. The next step right here, create the necessary nodes, was really that next step of being able to add the features I needed, create the different nodes within the graph that I needed, and not get too carried away with this. I just wanted to create the essential ones to make the actual dialogue system work, and then worry about adding new ones and cool fancy ones later on. But you'll see those nodes later on in the video. And then finally, as far as the dialogue system was concerned, I needed to implement the dialogue system. So, as I said before, there was some code that I hung on to that connected to the old system that I didn't throw away. That was code that had to do with connecting to the NPCs and the player, allowing the player to click on NPCs and cycle through a conversation. That code was broken because it was trying to connect to a dialogue graph that didn't exist anymore, but I was fairly easily able to rewire it so it worked with the new system. That code was fine. That was code that I just created on my own. I understood it because it was my code, and I was able to salvage that, which I was very grateful for. And then finally, the fun step that you'll be able to see in a bit, I updated the conversation pane artwork. If you remember from previous videos, I didn't really have any artwork to be considered like good final product stuff. Basically just a few buttons and some text boxes. So I finally overhauled that system, and I'll explain that process in a little bit. Unfortunately, no time lapses because I just sort of on a whim went into it and I wasn't recording, but you'll get to see the final product in a bit. So let's go ahead and hop over to the dialogue system and see what this looks like. So if you did watch that previous video, and you don't really need to anymore because I'm not using that code anymore, but if you did see it, you may recognize this graph view. Now again, this is overhauled, so this is a complete remake, but it looks very similar. So we've got no nodes in here, but if I come over to resources, graphs, you don't need to be seeing this path or anything, and click on this new graph over here, you'll see that it populates with a graph system that I have made. I'm not going to dive into the code for this because there's already a series telling you how to do this, just with my modifications. It's just not worth making this a coding video, but I will show you how it works. So here's the graph system, and you'll notice that they're pretty simple. There's no actual anything being displayed on the node. There's words here, if I can, I guess that's as far as I can zoom in, but this is like root node, question node, final say node. So these are the different nodes that I created for the game. And again, you'll notice there's no information on these different nodes within the tree, but if I click on them, their information appears in this side window right over there. So you can see this root node just has a statement, sup. And then this question node has a bit more data going on here. So it, like, I can fill in this statement, hello, it's good to see you, I hope you're enjoying blah, 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 blah. And then it's got a list of responses that I can add to and remove from and change as I want. And these different responses connect to different nodes within the tree in order from top to bottom, just like they are over here. And so just like previously for my graph system, I can right-click, add a new node, drag that node wherever I need it to be, and then I can add responses and add a statement. It's really easy within the system. Now, before I jump over to showing you what this looks like in the game, I will point out a few problems with the system. So in the old one, I had all of the information being displayed on the node itself, which meant you can very easily see the process of the conversation, how the conversations flow. You could target a specific point in the conversation and modify the information very easily. In this, there's not a lot being displayed to the user right now, so if I want to find a specific node in a tree with like hundreds of nodes, then I'd have to be clicking through trying to figure out how the conversation flows. I think I'm going to add like a toggle box that lets you see the information for each node displayed underneath it or around it, that you can toggle on and off, but I do like this clean look to it, you know? It's easy to organize, it doesn't have any nodes bigger than the other ones, so I think I'm going to make that feature toggleable. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump in to the actual game and see what this looks like in play mode. Now, as I said, my last step in this process was to create a new dialogue artwork. So you're going to see that right now. I'm going to come over to this person and I'm clicking on them, and you can see down here we've got some new art. The leave button is now in its little corner right there, and you can hover over it, and it shows that yellow around it. The person's name is displayed, and now you've got the options displayed in this little pane off to the side, and the text, and it actually works with the rest of the art. You know, it's a pixel art font. And as you can see, the character's saying, hello, it's really good to see you. I hope you enjoy your stay in our wonderful village, and I have a few different options. So I could click on an option like, how are you? And if I click on that, the conversation ends and the person says, great, thanks, above their head. But I can move around while they're saying that. I also have the option to leave the conversation, and they just say their default, bye dude. If I just leave the conversation in the middle of talking with the person, or some of these are actually going to continue the conversation. So these first ones, how are you, ends the conversation. The second one, you look funny, ends the conversation, and they say that's mean. So they're saying something specific to how I was talking to them. But then these other two are going to continue. You see I'm asking questions that require a response. So what's this place like? They're going to respond with, this place is amazing, I know you enjoy your stay. And then I have a couple responses that are sort of dead-end conversations, or dead-end statements, so they end the conversation. I sure hope I do. Oh, I know you will. And then just for completeness, I'll click on the last one. Where's the bathroom? Oh, that's in the end, just behind us. I have characters saying oh a whole lot at the beginning of a sentence. I think I do that so I'm just putting it into the conversation like everyone else. And then I can respond with thank you. And as you can see, these last three options are grayed out. There's no text by them. You can't hover over them. It clearly delineates that this is the only option other than leave. So I say thank you, and you're very welcome is the response. All of that feels really good from the user perspective, and I can tell you that it also feels really good from the game developer's perspective. For example, if I click on this person and I realize, okay, so we've got question marks at the end of these ones, but I didn't put a period at the end of you're funny, and I didn't put a question mark at the end of how are you? Well, that's really easy to fix. All I have to do is go in here, click on the node that has that information, and I just add the question mark, add the period, and hit play. And that's going to be saved. I can walk over to this character, and you can see the period and the question mark there. So just really easy, quick modifications, and I can fill out this conversation however I want. If we go back to the dialogue system, you can actually see that conversation built out as it was going before. We've got the root node, which we're not going to worry about right now, but then this question node, you know, it has the statement, it has those 4 questions, and then those first 2 options ended the conversation. She could responded with great thanks, or that's mean, and then the other 2 options, this is amazing, I know you'll enjoy your stay, and oh, that's the end just behind us. So the responses to what is this place like and where's the bathroom, those continue and have final nodes right there. Really easy to follow, really easy to understand, and I really like this system. It's not that much code, honestly, especially in comparison to the previous one. The nodes are really simple and easy to add to, and I'm looking forward to adding nodes like a shopping node or a quest node, or a receive item node where the NPC gives you an item and I can drag and drop a specific item into that slot within this graph. I'm just excited to see where this goes. Now, I do want to make a comment about the artwork, because I sort of had a revelation recently about how I want to approach art, and it really stemmed out of this art that you're seeing right here, the art for the dialogue, the text art. So this, if you remember a few times before this, I've talked about the distinction between placeholder art and final product art. And I distinguish those as placeholder art is art that will not find its way into the final product. So I said things such as the old character art and this building right here. These were placeholder art pieces, and they were definitely not going to be in the final product, versus other pieces of work that I intended to build later that would ultimately make it in. And I wanted to make sure I had that distinction. Something was going to be in the final product, something wasn't going to be in the final product. That caused a lot of stress, because it meant when I came about to make something like this building or the trees that I've been working on a couple months back, I approached them feeling like I needed to make sure they were production level worthy. They were something I wanted to see in the final work, or else it wasn't worth working on them at that time. And truth be told, I'm not talented enough yet to, or I'm not experienced enough yet to be able to make the kind of artwork that I want to see in the final piece. Like, this house looks good, this pane down here looks good, but it's not really up to snuff for what I ultimately want. And so I wasn't doing a lot of art for this because I was intimidated by it. Didn't like how the grass was coming, didn't like how the paths were coming. They were fine, but when I thought about production level art, they weren't good enough. So I'm having a different mentality. I'm not thinking about like placeholder art anymore versus production level art. I'm simply going to be trying to make the best I can right now and learn from that. I feel very confident that this art down here is not going to be in the final product. It'd be okay. It's as good as I can make it right now, but I don't think it'll be in the final product. But that's fine. It's as good as I could make right now, and I have confidence that I can do an iterative process of removing this, upgrading it, changing it, deleting it, whatever, and then just growing. My art can grow as I grow as an artist. That takes a lot of stress off of me as someone who's still learning pixel art for game development, and it means that my game can keep looking as good as I can possibly make it without the stress of each art piece has to be final by the time I complete it. So I just spent a little time talking about that because I felt like it was important. It was a big mistake I had made at the beginning of development, and it was a great breakthrough for me now to be just more comfortable as I approach the art piece of this game and just not the technical side. And so that brings us to the end of another sprint. Up next, in the next sprint, I want to really sink my teeth into working on PixelGen. Over the break, I talked to a lot of people about PixelGen, and there was a very positive remarks to it. So I really want to get that working, fleshed out, so that I can use it in the game, and so that maybe I can make other people, like other developers watching this, be able to use PixelGen. So that's what I'm going to be spending my time on in the next sprint. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this helpful or entertaining, please leave it a like, and I will see you in the next one.